Heading down into Sunnydene Ravine in Toronto, and though most of Ontario forests are second and third growth, meaning that the tree populations have been deforested and reforested, regrown 2 or 3 times, even though these forests are not old growth, they are still significant for the ecology here. As we explore the ravine, you have to keep in mind that this is a disturbed landscape, meaning that we as humans and dogs have an effect on this landscape. We're walking here, there's all kinds of developments. But the beautiful thing is that nature adapts, and nature, in a balanced ecosystem, there are plants that are specifically designated to populate disturbed ecosystems. And with this walk, I hope to help you appreciate what a wonderful ravine system we have here. Here we have a zigzag goldenrod. It's part of the aster family, which is a huge family of plants, and scientists are learning more and more about it every day. They're learning about new species that are subdivisions in the aster family. And this zigzag goldenrod, it's a native plant, and the common name, zigzag, refers to the fact that the stem kind of goes back and forth. And I also know it's a zigzag goldenrod because the little florets, the little aster florets, are arranged in a spike form. And it is another clue that I know that it's a zigzag goldenrod is because it's right near the stream here. And that's another clue that I can use in identifying plants, is where they're growing, in addition to stems, leaves, and flower arrangement. Just across the way here, we have the Canada goldenrod. This is also a native plant that's commonly seen on roadsides. Again, it's one of those plants that does colonize disturbed ecosystems. It's also part of the aster family. And the cool thing about it is it's actually made up of hundreds of little flowers, aster flowers, and each aster flower is further subdivided into little florets of male and female flowers. The way I know it's a Canada goldenrod is because it just has quite a bushy appearance. The leaves, the stem is kind of green, and the way that the flowers are arranged in kind of a plume shape. And right nearby, there's a very interesting plant. I get very excited seeing it. It's another plant that grows near the water. So again, we're still near kind of the river here. And this is called jewelweed, or touch-me-not. The Latin name is Impatiens capensis. And the cool thing about this plant, other than the fact that it's really gorgeous, is it's the only plant in the family Balsaminaceae that's actually native to our region. And the really interesting thing about these flowers is they actually, each one of these flowers is slightly differently shaped. So this kind of sepal here at the back will be at different angles, and what that facilitates is it allows different kinds of pollinators to use this plant for nectar. And so each flower will actually be angled differently depending on which kind of insect will be more suitable to pollinate it. So for instance, you could have bees, butterflies, and also hummingbirds can all feed off of this native plant. And the common name, touch me not, the reason it's called that is if you touch the seed pods, which have actually just been developing, they kind of explode out. Let me see. Oops, there we go. There's one. Let's try another one. There you go. So yeah, that's why it's touch me not. You can touch it. It's just it kind of does something exciting when you do touch it. And as well, we have a really nice example of another understory plant, which is a panicled aster. And these are kind of really pretty. They have little kind of purplish, reddish centers. And again, each one of these tiny flowers is composed of hundreds of little florets of male and female plants. And then just nearby, we have another kind of plant in the aster family. This one is called the daisy fleabane, and it is the annual type. And the way I know that is that the annual type tends to grow more near disturbed areas, which is kind of what we're in now. But nonetheless, we are at a very diverse woodland edge. And because of the variety of species and the protection of decaying matter, there's quite a rich ecosystem here of plants and animals. So we're still by the river here, and we're moving on from the understory to vines and climbers. Here we have two different types of native vine. We have, the first one is Virginia creeper, Parthenocissus quinquefolia, and the Latin name, the specific epithet quinquefolia, refers to the fact that there are quinque, 5 folia leaves, leaflets on each of the leaves. All vines, whether they're native or non-native, are very aggressive growers. So I do make that distinction. Just because a plant is native doesn't mean it can't be aggressive. So in this case, you see in the back here, there's a dying tree, which probably was an ash maybe, and there's a vine growing up it. And this is a fantastic thing I find about leaving dead and decaying material, is it allows for other organisms and plants to thrive. In this case, it provides a structure for this vine to grow up. The vine will then flower and produce berries for birds. And of course, this dying tree, this dead tree in fact, is called a snag, and leaving it in the ecosystem actually provides really fantastic benefits. So it provides habitat for different birds, small animals. It also will provide food sources for things like woodpeckers. So it's a really great thing to leave and kind of let nature take over and regenerate itself. The other vine that's here is a native riverbank grape, Vitis riparia. And again, you can have a clue from the name, is that it grows by waterways. Again, it's a very aggressive spreader. The fruits are not very palatable to humans, but they're a fantastic source of food for wildlife, so birds and small animals. So now we're heading uphill from the more riparian habitat, and I wanted to point out a couple small to medium-sized trees that generally live in the mid-story, so right under the canopy of the larger trees. One of them is the eastern hemlock, and it is an evergreen, but it's an evergreen that thrives in shaded areas, which is really a fantastic feature. The only other alternative really we have in this climate is the yew, which is also a great plant for wildlife when you let the berries develop. But of course, the eastern hemlock is one of those trees that has been around for hundreds of thousands of years in this ecosystem. And this one is actually quite gorgeous. It's quite old and open. It's a great option for residential landscapes as well. I find it is being used more often because of its applications in a more shady area. And the other tree that I wanted to point out here that's really cool is the musclewood or ironwood. That's just this here. So the cool thing about it is it has a very unique bark from which it derives its common name, musclewood. It kind of has a ridged, smooth bark. And again, it's a small tree that grows in the kind of mid-story underneath the larger trees. And ironically, despite the common name being musclewood or ironwood, it's actually not a very strong wood. And in fact, the only real use that it had in the past was to be used as charcoal for gunpowder. So again, a really unique tree that's here, right here in the middle of Toronto in one of our ravines. So now that we've discussed the understory and some of the smaller mid-story trees, we can move on to the giants of the forest. One of them being this gorgeous basswood or linden, Tilia americana. It is one of the trees that grows in the Overstory. It provides shade and protection for all the plants underneath. The Overstory trees are very important in the hardwood forest because they provide a shelter, of course, but also in the summer, the leaves provide really important shade. There have been studies that show that the forest floor is actually several degrees cooler than surrounding areas, and that's a really great bonus for people who live in urban centers like Toronto. So it can really, that's why it feels so nice to kind of descend into the valley. Another really gorgeous, gigantic tree we have here growing by the river is the sugar maple. This one's probably a couple hundred years old, which is pretty great for this kind of environment. And again, really gorgeous canopy. You can imagine all the critters that can use this and enjoy it, and all the plants that will thrive underneath it. Behind there, you can see there's a little hemlock growing in the partial shade. We have a little red maple seedling here, some more goldenrod. Yeah, so it's just a really great thing. And again, you can see the dead and decaying wood that has been left over that provides nourishment back into the soil and also provides habitat for insects. And here we are arriving at the silent stillness of a bog or a marsh habitat, greeted by a blue flag iris, Iris reticulata, which is a native plant as well. As well, in the Overstory, we have this gorgeous red spruce, Piquet rubra. It's a fantastic native tree that has been in this area for hundreds of thousands of years. In fact, evergreen trees evolved before our flowering trees. So in fact, the spruce is indigenous to this area for many hundreds of years, and it really is remarkable that it's thriving here in this little stretch of land in the middle of our city. The red spruce, the way I know it is spruce is because the cones are kind of pendulous. They hang downwards, and they're quite small as well. This is compared to firs and pines. The other thing is with the spruce, if you take the leaves and the tips of the branches, you can actually mix it with honey and make a nice spruce beer as well. Again, this is a really valuable tree, evergreens especially being valuable in the winter time to protect different species of animals and insects. And in the bog, this silent resting place, there are some interesting species of note here. There is our northern red oak, which is a very important tree in supporting our local wildlife. We have some gorgeous dogwood shrubs as well, which are a fantastic plant for wet soils. and provide quite a bit of ornamental interest in a ornamental setting, in a residential setting. And as well, there are some New England asters back there, which are doing quite well near the goldenrod. I'd like to end here with the yellow birch that has died. It's died many years ago, but it's still here, and it's a very important part of this particular microclimate. You can see where birds have been foraging for food. There are fungi growing on it, slowly decomposing it and making the lignified cells more into nutrients that can be more easily digested by other plants. And this is what really gives me hope, because death is never final in nature. There's always transformation and rebirth. The very process of photosynthesis is quite miraculous, taking inorganic elements like carbon and water with sunshine and turning them into oxygen, carbohydrates. And then, of course, the miraculous adaptation of perennial plants to survive through the winter months is even more interesting, as they're able to transport those carbohydrates that they've collected over the summer and keep them stored for new growth in the spring. And that's what really gives me hope, though autumn and fall can often be a somber time represented by poets and artists. The more you learn about nature, the more you realize how it's actually a very hopeful time for waiting for spring and a new burst of growth that will definitely come.